Let's talk about Aaron Rodgers, Woody Johnson, and the New York Jets. This organization has a lot of decisions to make with Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers, the brand new head coach, and a brand new general manager. But I want to start off with Woody Johnson. Woody Johnson has not been a good owner over the last couple of years with the Jets. The New York Jets, in theory, should be better than 5-12. When you have a quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, who is not the same player that he was with the Green Bay Packers, but he is still serviceable at times. You have Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall. You would think that this offense can at least be ranked 15th in this league. And you would think with the defense that they've had over the last few years, this would at least be a playoff caliber team, but they weren't. Only 5-12 on the year. And I look at Woody Johnson, all the reports that have come out since Joe Douglas got fired about him making a lot of decisions based off a video game of football. They didn't trade for Jerry Jeudy because his Madden rating was too low. That was crazy. Now, I'm not going to come on here and say that's 100% true, but a lot of the reports coming out about Woody Johnson did not get leaked out until Joe Douglas got fired over a month ago. And Joe Douglas, you can make the case they did do him dirty, but at the same time, Joe Douglas did draft Zach Wilson. Joe Douglas did bring in Robert Saleh, and the New York Jets have underachieved on the offensive end, even before Aaron Rodgers. But when I look at Woody Johnson, he made a lot of decisions this season based off emotions alone. I think it's best for him to go out there and sit down with executive vice presidents, with the New York Jets, sit down with the brand new general manager and see what you want to do with this roster. Do you want to have a complete overhaul? Do you want to gut this entire roster? What do you want to do moving forward? Because right now, I could come on here and say that it's very easy to move on from Aaron Rodgers, but who would their quarterback be for the next year or two? Are you going to bring in a bridge quarterback like Sam Darnold? Do you want to bring him back to the New York Jets? Look at what happened with Sam Darnold in the first go around with the Jets. Now, granted, Adam Gase was the head coach and he was just placed in a terrible situation, a bad offensive line. But you could say that about a lot of New York Jets quarterbacks. Look at Geno Smith. They could not properly develop him. And look at Geno Smith now with the Seattle Seahawks. He's a solid quarterback. You look at Zach Wilson. That entire experiment didn't work out. That is what has led to the Aaron Rodgers tenure so far with the Jets, because Zach Wilson did not work out. So now look at Woody Johnson going out there and firing Coach Saleh after the Minnesota Vikings game and not consulting with anyone else. That's a problem. He owns the team. He can do whatever the hell he wants. But it would be best to go out there and at least sit down with your general manager and say, I'm frustrated and I want better results. Should I fire this coach? What should I do? But instead, he went out there and he acted off of emotions. He fired Robert Saleh, and then a month later, he fired Joe Douglas. Now, you get into the Robert Saleh situation. At the time, I hated the move, and I still hate the move. I understand both sides. When you're a head coach, you take care of the entire team. Offense, defense, special teams. Robert Saleh was producing some of the best defenses the league has seen over the last 5 years with the New York Jets. This man had a better defense with the Jets than he did when he was a defensive coordinator for the 49ers. The New York Jets defense was easily a top defense, even when they had Zach Wilson as a starting quarterback. Do you know how hard it is for your defense, who was on the field majority of the time, to go out there and be dominant when your quarterback is Zach Wilson and he's turning the football over at a high clip and it's a bunch of 3-and-outs? Even though their defense was very good, Robert Saleh could never figure out the offensive side of the ball. He hired Coach LaFleur. Coach LaFleur was a terrible offensive coordinator. And then when they brought in Aaron Rodgers, you could say that Aaron Rodgers had a lot of say-so with the organization. But at the end of the day, Woody Johnson, Joe Douglas, and Robert Saleh all got bullied by him, and they could have told him no. Robert Saleh went out there. He brought in Nathaniel Hackett, who has been a terrible coach in this league. Had a very good tenure with the Green Bay Packers. But look at him with the Packers. He had Coach LaFleur. He was the head coach. Coach LaFleur was going out there and calling those plays. Look at the Green Bay Packers offense now. Look at Nathaniel Hackett without Aaron Rodgers. Look at him when he was the head coach with the Denver Broncos and the main offensive play caller. They fired him after one season. Nathaniel Hackett is a position coach in name only. That's it. I don't ever see Nathaniel Hackett going out there and being a head coach ever again, or even being a mediocre offensive coordinator. He is just terrible. And then you had Todd Downing on the roster. At the end of the day, you could cater to Aaron Rodgers, but Robert Saleh made those decisions and he got fired because of it. I don't agree with the move. I think that it was the wrong thing to do. At least let him finish out the entire season with Aaron Rodgers. He never got a fair chance with Aaron Rodgers. He did with Zach Wilson. Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas, they love Zach Wilson. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. And that led to them going out there and making a trade to bring in Aaron Rodgers. So I understand both sides of the fence with Robert Saleh. Personally, if it's me, I'll let him finish out the season. And if they didn't make the NFL playoffs, I'll push him out the door, because eventually it was going to be time to move on from Robert Saleh if he could not figure out the offensive side of the ball. And I look at the offensive coaches that he brought in, even as a Saleh fan, there's no excuse for it. It was terrible. But when I look at Aaron Rodgers, this was a man that was supposed to come in and be the franchise savior. The New York Jets have done something similar like this before when they made the trade to bring in Brett Favre many decades ago. They brought in Brett Favre, and they were going to try to go out there and make a run. Brett Favre was in a similar situation as Aaron Rodgers. The Green Bay Packers traded him to the Jets, and they had a young Aaron Rodgers that was ready to start right then and there. Aaron Rodgers was frustrated with the Green Bay Packers. He wanted to go out there and see them make some moves at the wide receiver position, but they didn't. They had a bunch of young wide receivers, and they had a lot of major drops. On the back half of the season, they did look better. I will never forget the game that Christian Watson had against the Dallas Cowboys. 3 receiving touchdowns, but he did lose against the Detroit Lions. They pushed him out the door in favor of Jordan Love. He was very welcoming and encouraging towards Jordan Love, something that Brett Favre didn't do for Aaron Rodgers. He made him feel distant, and he was very cold towards Aaron Rodgers. And the reason I bring that up is because I'm going to expand on that point in the next couple of minutes. But Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles in year number 1 with the Jets. Season was already a wash. They have to go back to Zach Wilson. But this was supposed to be the season to where they were supposed to go out there and make a Super Bowl run. You have the key weapons on the outside with Garrett Wilson. You have Allen Lazard. Allen Lazard, solid wide receiver when he's playing with Aaron Rodgers. In his first year with the Jets, he could barely find playing time on the field. Once again, terrible coaching by Nathaniel Hackett, who coached him with the Green Bay Packers. Then they brought in Davante Adams right after they fired Coach Saleh. And that first game against the Steelers, you saw this wasn't going to work. This was a team that was just on borrowed time. You just have a bunch of veterans on this roster that are not going to work out. When I look at Aaron Rodgers, the numbers this season aren't bad. 28 passing touchdowns, those aren't bad numbers. For him to go out there and have 28 passing touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and he had the 8th most passing yards with 3,897 passing yards, you would think that's a top-end quarterback, at least with this defense. But that was not the case. This is why numbers can lie to you at times. Aaron Rodgers, when it mattered the most, he was not good. He had a pick 6 against the Minnesota Vikings in the game that got Robert Saleh fired, and he had 3 interceptions in total in that matchup. He threw the game-winning interception. Aaron Rodgers did not look like his former self. And that's very scary for the Jets if they want to hold on to him. He's not the same quarterback that he once was. He's coming off that Achilles injury. A lot of guys in the media, they praise Patrick Mahomes because of his ability to move outside the pocket and make a lot of crazy throws. That is what Aaron Rodgers used to be able to do. This man is still going to be a Hall of Famer. What I'm about to say right now is not going to discredit what he did in the past. He's one of the best quarterback talents that I've ever seen. When I look at Aaron Rodgers right now, he's a shell of his former self, and he should really be contemplating retirement because of the attitude off the field, the way that he rubs coaches the wrong way. Robert Saleh went in for a hug. He extends his hand, and he says, "Not yet." And then just a couple weeks later, they fire Coach Saleh. He has that close relationship with Nathaniel Hackett, and he did have a lot of power with the New York Jets. Nathaniel Hackett was no longer the offensive coordinator. They didn't fire him. They demoted him. He stayed with the roster. And they let Ty Downing come in and call plays, who was a terrible offensive coordinator with the Tennessee Titans. Usually when you see coordinators get fired, you're no longer with the team. Nathaniel Hackett was still with the team because he has a good relationship with Aaron Rodgers. And this goes into my discussion with the fact that Aaron Rodgers bullied Robert Saleh. He bullied Joe Douglas to basically say, hey, these are my guys. Let them stay on the roster. And then when they fired Robert Saleh, Joe Douglas and everyone else, they kept the guys around. Now, that came down to Coach Brick. Coach Brick became the interim head coach, and I do feel for him. This is a man that was a solid linebacker in this league. He's their former defensive coordinator. He's not ready to be a head coach. Not just yet, maybe in the future. But this man was not a good interim head coach. He had a lot of problems managing the game, misusing timeouts, not throwing challenge flags. He just missed a lot of the basic things that head coaches should be able to do. But once again, he should have never been in this situation. But when they fired Robert Saleh, that's when you saw Aaron Rodgers keep his friends around. But when I look at Aaron on the film, he still has a place in the league. He could be a serviceable quarterback for a team that has a young quarterback that they're trying to develop, because he was so welcoming and so encouraging to Jordan Love. Put the political stuff aside, put the attitude aside off the field and on the field. Aaron Rodgers can give you good play here and there. He's not the same franchise quarterback that he once was, but he's not a terrible quarterback. I can name worse starting quarterbacks than Aaron Rodgers right now. He can definitely go out there and help a team, but he has to go out there and humble himself, because he has not looked good over the last few years. Even in that last season with the Green Bay Packers, you saw him take a step back. This is still a man that has won numerous MVPs in this league. He's going to still be a Hall of Famer. He's a Super Bowl champion. But Aaron Rodgers needs to humble himself. And I'm saying all of this right now about the Jets. Your quarterbacks in this roster, besides Aaron, is Tyrod Taylor, who came in against the Buffalo Bills. They got crushed by the Buffalo Bills. Aaron Rodgers did not even put a touchdown up in this matchup. And in garbage time, Tyrod Taylor went out there. He put some touchdowns on the board. But you have Tyrod Taylor. You have Adrian Martinez. Those are your quarterbacks. And Jordan Travis. None of those guys are going to be your franchise guy moving forward. And unless you want to bring in a guy like Sam Darnold, who was drafted by this organization in the first round, you push him out the door for Zach Wilson. You maybe bring in a guy like Justin Fields. The quarterback market right now is not good. And I don't see the New York Jets going out there and trading for Kirk Cousins. That's not going to happen. They just traded for a quarterback that is older, and he had an Achilles injury. And look how Aaron Rodgers looks now. And Aaron Rodgers is better than Kirk Cousins right now. So now look at this situation. It's not an easy answer for me to come on here and say, move off Aaron Rodgers. Just let him go. Who the hell is going to be their quarterback? And they don't have a draft pick to go out there and select a guy like Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, unless they go with Carson Beck in the first round, which is a crazy reach. They may go with Carson Beck in the second or third round, but is he going to be your guy on day one? This is a bad quarterback class. So do not be surprised if the New York Jets running back with Aaron Rodgers. Now, I think that the ship is sailed on that, but they could possibly bring him back. This is why Woody Johnson has to go out there and sit down with a brand new head coach and with a brand new general manager and let them run the show. It is his team. But we've seen with the moves over the last few years, as long as Woody Johnson is going out there and he's vetoing trades and he's overstepping the general manager and he has more say-so than him and he's not letting the general manager do his job, they'll never get anywhere because he's a terrible football mind right now. And I'm just being honest here. Now, look at the rest of the offense. You have Garrett Wilson. It could be smoke to this fire. There's a lot of reports coming out that he could request a trade. I hope that's not the case. I'm not one of those fans that love to see players move around to go into the quote-unquote better situation. He got drafted by the New York Jets. He is still a very good wide receiver. He put up very good production with Zach Wilson in a bad offense with Coach LaFleur and with Coach Hackett. There's talent here with this kid. Now, this season, he did take a step back, but he had over 1,000 receiving yards. A lot of that is because they brought in Davante Adams. He became the de facto number 2 wide receiver. He's a true number 1. He dealt with bad offensive line play, bad quarterback play, and the chemistry was not there with Aaron Rodgers, which also opens up this conversation. Aaron Rodgers needs to show up for training camp. It is so many things with him off the field that are so annoying. If you bring in a firm head coach like a Rex Ryan, who they're interviewing right now, I think that he'll be harder on Aaron Rodgers and he will show up. At the end of the day, you're a professional, you're a grown man, you have to show up. And you have to perform to the best of your abilities. The coach can only do so much. But Aaron Rodgers has to find that in himself. Does he actually care? Do you want to stay after practice? Do you want to show up before practice? Get the work in with Davante Adams. Get the work in with Garrett Wilson. Go out there and build that chemistry instead of going out there on the Pat McAfee show. It's a bad look. I rarely come on here and talk about what players do outside of football because I really don't care. But when your team is getting their teeth kicked in repeatedly and you're going to the Pat McAfee show and you're complaining about leaks coming out of the organization and how we need to play better, how about you take that time and you tell Pat McAfee, hey, I'm not going to come on this week. It'll be a few trolls that say, oh, Aaron didn't show up this week because they got beat bad. That could be a bad look, but at the same time, it shows that you're going out there and you're trying your best to win on the field. You have to be all in. And Aaron Rodgers will be 42 years old next year. So he has to make his mind up with what he wants to do. But Pat McAfee cannot be the number one option a couple of days after the game. Getting that chemistry right with your coaches and getting that chemistry right with your offensive players, that should be the main priority. And then you can go on the podcast shows where you're winning games, when you win a championship with the team. But back to Garrett Wilson. When I look at Garrett Wilson, this kid's phenomenal. He had the catch of the year against the Houston Texans, Thursday Night Football. There's talent here with him. I hope that he doesn't request a trade, and I hope that he's with the New York Jets long term. They drafted him in the first round, and it's just a great story to go out there and pay your own talent, especially for a kid that has dealt with struggling situations. I look at Davante Adams. He is still a very good wide receiver. He wasn't a top 3 wide receiver this season, but the talent is still there with him. He is getting older, but you can keep him around. When I look at the offensive line, they brought in Tyron Smith. Huge mistake. When Tyron Smith is on the field, he's solid. He's not the same tackle that he was with the Dallas Cowboys. He can't finish out the season. And we saw this 6 years ago. He was a great offensive lineman for many years with the Cowboys. It's the knee injuries. It's the back injuries. It's the neck injuries. And I can tell you this from personal experience and seeing it from older people. When you're dealing with a neck injury, a back injury, or knee injury, you'll never be the same. Especially playing a high collision sport like football. Retirement may be next for Tyron Smith. I look at Max Mitchell. He gave you solid snaps this season. I'm not saying he's going to be a franchise tackle, but I think there's something there with him. You need to expand on his game. I think that the more snaps you give him, he could become comfortable at that tackle position. You brought in Morgan Moses. He missed time. He's a veteran tackle. It's not a bad player to have around. He's a solid tackle. Your offensive line is still a problem. You have Elijah Vera Tucker. Solid player. The thing is this with Elijah Vera Tucker, he's dealt with so many injuries in the past. You want to invest a lot of money in him moving forward. You have okay pieces on the offensive line, but they're still not truly elite because your offensive coaching has been so terrible. And we've seen this with other teams across the league. When you bring in the right offensive pieces and that coaching staff, it can make a hell of a difference. There is no way, and I refuse to believe this, there is no way this Jets team should have went 5-12 with the talent that they have. I'm sorry. With Davante Adams, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, and you have Braylon Allen at the running backs at their respective positions in the running back room, there is no way. And you have a veteran quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. They should have been running the football more to take the pressure off of Aaron Rodgers. There's not a lot of responsibilities in the offensive line room. This was just a mess on the coaching staff front. And once again, I can blame Woody Johnson for that. But who brought in the offensive coaching staff? Robert Saleh did. That did fall underneath him. And they had offensive problems before Aaron Rodgers. You can't blame that on him. You can't blame missed assignments up front on Aaron Rodgers. He's shifting protection. Aaron Rodgers has been in the league forever. The man has won MVPs, and he's won a Super Bowl. He knows different looks. He knows different blitzes. When a tackle isn't picking up a blitzer off the right side, when they're missing a stunt in front of them and he's getting the play blown up in his face, that's not on Aaron Rodgers. The interceptions, sure, but the drop passes, the fact that they couldn't stop the run and their defense took a major step back when they fired Coach Saleh, that's not on Aaron. I feel like Aaron Rodgers gets a lot of unnecessary hate because his attitude and the way that he acts towards the media. But a lot of this stuff was out of his control. Did he want to be coached by Nathaniel Hackett? Sure, that's on him. But once again, when you are a coach, you can tell the player, you know what? No, I'm the coach here. Let me do my job. You do your job. Because it's a huge difference from me watching the game on TV, from Aaron Rodgers playing the game, and from Nathaniel Hackett, Coach Saleh, whomever coaching the game. When I look at the best players in the NFL that have went out there and played, how many of those guys have went over to become coaches and they have been elite coaches in the league? And that's for any sports league. In basketball, you can name a few. In football, it's not that many. And I'm talking about top-end players. Some of them don't even want to go out there and coach. They go to the front office. So now look at Aaron Rodgers. You can save him from himself and say, hey, Nathaniel Hackett, I'm not bringing him in. You can talk to him off the field. You can consult with him in the offseason. But from the system I like to run, he's not going to be around. And I know that can bring in a toxic element. If he wants to be toxic, you can move off of him. Because the way that you're supposed to run your organization, no one is bigger than the organization. No one should be bigger than the New York Jets logo. And they kind of let Aaron Rodgers' head get a little bit big. And I blame that on the coaching staff and the fact that they didn't discipline him in. Maybe a coach like Rex Ryan would come in and change all of this. But it's going to take a lot. It's going to take for Woody Johnson to step aside also. When I look at this defense, their defense is still solid. You have Sauce Gardner, did take a step back this season, but he's still a very good football player. And I know that a lot of people are questioning his heart right now because he missed a game, the last game of the season, that he was completely checked out. I'm not going to question his effort. I've seen him in the past be one of the best cornerbacks in the league. I think it was just a bad year. The fact that you saw your head coach get fired on your phone, no one notifies you, and he didn't even get to have a goodbye meeting, that says a lot. And that's a huge impact on the player. And he had a close relationship with Saleh off the field. Once again, be a professional, but at the same time, Woody Johnson, you could at least let the man go out there and say goodbye to his team instead of having security escort him out. But when I look at Sauce Gardner, I think that he will be fine moving forward. You have DJ Reed, you have Michael Carter II. Their passing defense is good. They were the fourth best in the NFL this year. You have Will McDonald, who had 10.5 sacks on the year. Jermaine Johnson got injured early in the year. I think Jermaine Johnson has potential to be the best pass rusher with this organization. Him and Will McDonald, they have a bright future in this league at their respective defensive end positions. You have Javon Kinlaw, awkward fit without Coach Saleh because he helped draft him with the San Francisco 49ers. In theory, he would work out very well alongside Quinn Williams, but without having that head coach there, without having that presence, I don't know about his future with this organization. You have Quincy Williams, very good linebacker. He's the brother of Quinn Williams. This is not a nepotism thing. This kid is just a straight baller at the linebacker spot. Just a very good player to have. He's a sound tackler, very good in coverage also. I like his game a lot. Now look at CJ Mosley. You can move on from CJ Mosley. Missed time this year, dealing with a toe injury. He's not the same linebacker that he once was. Even last season, he's taking a step back. A lot of it can be because Coach Brick was the interim head coach. He wasn't ready for that spot. He should just stay the defensive coordinator. But at the same time, the injuries do concern me and the fact that he is getting older. With all of that being said, I think the New York Jets will be in a bad situation as long as Woody Johnson is putting his nose in business. If Woody Johnson wants to go out there and be the general manager and the owner, just say that. Jerry Jones does it with the Dallas Cowboys. But look at the lack of success the Dallas Cowboys have had over the last decade plus. I want to see the New York Jets be good. My entire childhood, I saw Tom Brady go out there and repeatedly win this division and go to the Super Bowl. And when the Patriots have a down year and when they're basically one of the worst teams in the league over the last few years, the New York Jets can't capitalize. You won one more game than the New England Patriots with way more talent. That says a lot about the ownership, and it says a lot about the coaching with this roster. And you also have the Buffalo Bills in this division. This was supposed to be a rebuilding year for the Bills. And they won this division. And you have the Miami Dolphins with Tua, who is struggling to stay healthy. So the door could be wide open for the Jets, but they have to make the right decisions. And it starts in the front office. When they bring in the general manager, when they bring in the head coach, we'll get more clarity on this situation. And I know I've come on here in the past. I've made my jokes about Aaron Rodgers. I've made my jokes about the New York Jets. I do feel bad. Because with all the hype that they had this season, hell, even last season, before Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles, it was fun to watch how New York Jet fans were interacting because they wanted to go out there and see their team win. They had high hopes. And then when you saw them lose against the Steelers, all the Jets fans threw their hands up and they were just done with the organization. But this all starts with Woody Johnson. Woody Johnson has done a lot of bad things with this organization, and to just see the amount of quarterbacks that just walk in and out of that door is mind-boggling. And I also wonder about Zach Wilson long term. I think that Zach Wilson could possibly get another chance in the league. When I look at Sam Darnold, I look at Geno Smith, I scratch my head and say, was I completely wrong about this kid? Because even coming out of college, I wasn't the biggest Zach Wilson fan. I thought they made a huge mistake selecting him in the first round. When I look at Zach Wilson compared to the other quarterbacks, he looked just as bad. Maybe he can go to a different team with better coaching. But I can't emphasize this enough. Offensive coaching, especially in today's game, can make a hell of a difference. But let me know in the comment section below, what should the New York Jets do? Should they keep Aaron Rodgers or should they completely start over and bring in a brand new quarterback? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, I want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for the video, guys. God bless.